Okay, minutes ago, we just had the close of the Monday session. We are now starting the Tuesday session for Bitcoin. The Monday session, we closed down nearly 1.5%, 1.47%. Sunday, we were up by 0.88%, and then Saturday, we were down 1.10%. But we went down to that 20-period moving average on the Monday session, rebounded. We still closed down nearly 1.5%, but not off of the lows, but just slightly under that 10-period moving average. The 10 is still above the 20, and we're watching our peak from November 22nd. We're watching to see our signals warned we are going to get a pullback. We ended up dropping about 9% and then rebounding back up here just above our 20-period moving average, and now testing it again with the Monday session. So we'll be watching, can we exceed that peak and move above 100,000? The top came in right there at that November 22nd high, right at 99,800. Do we exceed it and go above 100,000 and then quickly turn down, 102, 103, 104, 105,000? Or if we get above that peak on at 99,800, do we go on to the next level of resistance at the 110 to 115,000 area? But as we start the Tuesday session, Bitcoin is flat at the moment, dropping 1.50 or nearly 1.5%, I should say, the Monday session. And we bounced off that average price of Bitcoin there at the 52,000, 53,000 area. We saw signals quickly turn back to bullish with that bounce. Had some mild pullbacks, but signals have been consistently bullish. The RSI has been consistently above the 50 level in the daily time frame. So again, we're watching to see what happens here. Do we get a bigger pullback and then still try to go higher, or do we start a reversal with a lower high to exceed 100,000? We'll be looking for clues. Still holding strong above our 100-period moving average. And again, as long as Bitcoin holds above the 100-period moving average in the daily time frame, that is a sign of strength. We sell off and we get a big drop back to it. As long as we're above it, say we drop all the way back down to it and it's rising as we go, and say we come down here and then we pop back up. As long as we hold above the 100-period moving average, longer term, that's a bullish sign. Form a topping process surrounding the 100,000 area and end up dropping back below the 100-period moving average. That is a sign of weakness. A recession is coming. We know the recession indicators are warning we're about to move into recession, likely to show up some point by quarter or very early into the second quarter, like April. More than likely, you're going to see a recession there in early 2025. And the question is, can Bitcoin rally into the beginning of the recession? Or if it starts sooner, does Bitcoin begin to top out and begin to tank? It's going to be very difficult for Bitcoin to rally longer term with a recession. But you got the herd and the experts telling us, oh, there's going to be no recession. Got Powell and the Fed out there saying, oh, there's no rush. There's no hurry to cut rates. This is exactly what they said in 2007. And doing the same thing they did in 2007. No signs of a recession. We saw deterioration in the labor market, just like we saw in 2007, with lower numbers in 2007 by nearly or by almost 1 million jobs. The 2006 numbers, Fed was focusing on inflation, which is at higher levels back then than it is right now. Focused on inflation when they should have been worried about the recession. And again, they completely blindsided by the recession, just as they're going to be right now. Amazing. But we have reliable indicators like the Psalm rule with the unemployment rate, 3-month moving average of the unemployment rate, and the yield curve. These are accurate, reliable recession indicators, both predicting we're about to have a recession. Wouldn't bet against them. So the question is, can the rally continue? If it does it go up to 110, 115,000, stall out, or just above 100,000 and stall out? Is the recession delayed a little bit longer and Bitcoin can go higher? We'll be watching. But again, have been consistently bullish since the 52,000 area here. We've had a few pullbacks. My signals did call them correctly. if we can get above, again, I told you if we get above that 77, 78,000 with a successful back test of the trend lines, then that would be very, very bullish. We saw all of our weekly signals turn back to bullish with this breakout and back test to come up to major resistance. We're going to be watching to see, do we get some kind of pullback or reversal? Do we continue onward and upward above 100,000? And if so, is it just moving slightly above 100,000? You know, like I said, 102, 105,000, something like that. And we turn down, head fake above resistance, or do we go to the next level of resistance near that 110, 115,000 area? I'll be watching if we do get a sell-off or go a little bit higher and get a sell-off. I'll be watching some of these trend lines. This one's very important right here, which is horizontal support from our March peak. I told you right here, when we pushed up here, we didn't move above it. We came up $200 short. We were going to back test this trend line and move to a new high. We did, but then I told you if we were going to see the bulls back in the driver's seat, we had to clear 77,000, getting a decisive push above this area. We did do that. The bulls are in control with that successful breakout and back test. My momentum signals turned bullish long before that in the weekly time frame. But again, as I've said, the daily signals have been consistently bullish through this uptrend. We've had a few mild pullbacks, but I told you right here, we are going to break out to new highs, at least going to 77, 78,000. I told you if we go above that, then again, to be watching the trend lines of resistance, which we're at right now. I talked about those trend lines before we ever broke out. I talked about those trend lines in the weekly time frame. One of the bullish scenarios I talked about, the other one is that we somehow managed to dodge a recession, the dollar collapse, which again, the dollar has broken out. Recession indicators are flashing, so that's not good for a long-term bull market for Bitcoin. We have a breakout though, and we've moved up to the next level of resistance. The risk is that it doesn't last if Bitcoin begins to price in a recession. Bitcoin has never gone through a recessionary period where we get a bear market. When we went through the recession in 2020, it was very brief, had huge government and Fed intervention. This next recession is going to be different. We're actually going to have a recession. The recession that the Fed tried to prevent has really just been delayed. And we should have had, we're going to have. Right now, again, we'll be watching. We've had a 9% pullback. We've tried to rally out the 20 period. We'll be looking to see if the 20 period, the bounce off the 20 period of Monday, gives us further traction upside or start losing that 20 period moving average. Two important levels. The 100 period moving average, as long as we hold above that, that's a sign of strength. Even if we get a big sell-off, much bigger sell-off, you'd have to drop below the 100 period moving average. Longer term sell-off, we'd have to drop below Bitcoin's average price and stay below it. We bounced off of it here at 52,000 and here at 49,000. I talked about those levels at the time being key support along with our 50 period moving average in the weekly time frame. Now, getting some warning signs as we start the Tuesday session. We got this X on top of the Monday bar saying, hey, possible short-term top could be setting up here. Still could go higher, even if with that signal. But again, we got it over here as we started the weakness, and it ended up getting a much bigger drop. But it did show up at the very beginning, and we saw the impulse line turn red. That's trying to turn right now with the Tuesday session. So we'll be watching. Do we close that way by the Tuesday session? And if so, again, there is risk of a lower high here and a bigger sell-off. Trend signals remain bullish. The cloud is bullish. The ribbon is bullish. We're trying to flip momentum here. We've got this X. We'll see what happens with that. The purple line right here represents the short-term trend that is still bullish and rising. We're turning down here with momentum, at least so far. And if momentum goes negative and we start seeing the momentum line, the impulse line and the momentum line, which I'm about to show you, and we start seeing signals begin to turn, start taking out the cloud here, then you could get a bigger sell-off. Be watching. Can we still try to push above that 100,000 area? And if so, what happens. Again, I talked about the possibility of a divergence, another triple divergence developing here. That is still very, very possible. Or pullback and still going to higher levels. So do keep that in mind. But we're looking for clues surrounding this 100,000 area as we're hitting some key resistance levels. Signals are still bullish, but momentum is trying to flip bearish at the moment here with the impulse line. It's got to be able to close that way, so we'll see what happens by Tuesday's close. Now, the same is true for the momentum line. It's trying to flip, and we're getting this arrow. This is what we had back over here just before we dropped 5%. It showed up. These signals began to show up as with momentum, the momentum flipping to red, and the arrow began to show up as we started to move off of the highs and opening of this bar. Here at the opening of this bar, we're getting the same signals. So again, something worth paying attention to. If we get a rally back up, these signals could get canceled out. But right now, momentum is trying to flip bearish at the moment. So red alert, momentum is trying to flip bearish so far with a lower high. So again, if we start getting a lower high, lower low, we start taking out this level, then again, we can get a bigger sell-off. That doesn't mean we can't go to a new high. Mean that momentum flips bearish because the trend signals all start turning bearish. This line, it represents the swing move. And with the peak, the sell-off of 9%, the rebound back up, it's gone flatlined now. As we're seeing the momentum trying to shift back to bearish here for the Tuesday session. So again, is it going to be close but no cigar to the 100,000 level, or do we pull back and then get above it, or do we for the consolidation or try to still reach that level above 100,000? We'll be watching this closely. Just want to say these signals did a very good job calling the bottom, and then we saw momentum turn up, and then again predicting the pullback here. I told you we were going to bounce off the 100 period moving average, which we ended up doing, but it was correct. And then the pullbacks here, the pullback here, signals turned right back to bullish, right back to bullish. And this gave us, again, that push to new highs, as we talked about. We were going to get a presidential election. Very well could change signals back to bullish on the weekly chart. It ended up doing that. Got above that 77, 78,000 area. We really got confirmation of a successful breakout and back test of the trend line there. So again, going to be watching this, but again, is about the close, so we'll be watching what does the Tuesday close look like. Balance of power down here still positive at the moment, and again, I'm trying to shift for the Tuesday session. Talk to you about the RSI. I warned you before the 9% sell-off that we were going to get a sell-off because of this divergence right here with the RSI. We had the same thing with momentum and other warning signs on the 4-hour charts forming divergences as well. I talked about all of that, and that did play out. We bounced off the cloud right here, the momentum cloud, and I told you we still may end up seeing a triple divergence develop and go above 100,000 and then get a bigger drop for either a bigger pullback or a reversal. But if we start seeing momentum turn down, then could we confirm a lower high, getting a lower high, lower low for a bigger sell-off? Still come back up and move above 100,000. That's still possible as long as we hold above our 100 period moving average and the peak over here at 73,000 or 73,800. But I'm watching this closely. I told you we had a very similar divergence back over here at the March peak. And again, we had that divergence give us a turn down. Have we just now put in a lower high, or do we still try to go up a little bit higher above 100,000? Big move above 100,000 to the 110, 115,000, the next significant level of resistance. So watching this closely, but the previous diversions gave us a very nice sell-off. We've had the rebound. We've got a lower high. Do we stop making new highs? Do we get a lower high, lower low, and come back and take out this low? So again, got to be watching. Momentum's trying to turn bearish. Again, could change by the close. We'll see what happens. The MACD we've rolled over, and it's bearish. There's still the possibility of a bigger sell, but it could also form a divergence if we can get some traction back up, a form of divergence on the MACD and form a triple divergence on the R side. That is still very, very possible. So again, we're going to be looking at our signals. Again, the weekly signals, momentum and the trend still bullish. In the daily time frame, the trend is still bullish, but momentum trying to turn back down with a lower high, at least so far. As we're starting the Tuesday session, we're flat. We're seeing the divergences having played out, giving us a 9% sell-off. We turn back up, and now they're rolling over the MACD and they've turned back down, and that's given us this little bit of a sell-off we've had here on the Monday session. Does it roll over and go negative, and we end up getting a bigger sell-off back to the 200 or the 400 period moving average and start seeing a big sell-off? Or again, do we firm up around the center line here and turn back up and end up getting a triple divergence and going higher, move above 100,000 to 102, 105 if we just overthrow it, the trend lines, or if we go of resistance on the weekly chart, if we go above them, decisively above them, again, that 110, 115,000 area. At the divergence with pring parameter, it could still turn up and give us another reference point of a divergence, go to the levels of resistance I've been talking about. But like I said, if we start dropping and this starts moving into negative territory, then again, that's going to be very problematic. If we take out the 200 period moving average and then have the 50 cross below it, that would be problematic. So again, just some levels to be watching. Do we get a lower high and a lower low here and move back towards our 200 period moving average here in the 4-hour time frame? Quickly, as Bitcoin is above the 100 and follows the 100 period in the daily time frame, it follows the 20-week in the weekly time frame. That's the green line right here. And again, it's rising. We got above it. We back tested it, just overthrew it, just like the 100 period. As long as we hold above these levels, then kind of strength. But if we start collapsing and we end up losing these levels of support, like we did back over here, the 20-week moving average, then that's not going to be good. That's going to be bearish. Tried to lose it over here. We dropped below it. We got back above it. We held below it, but then we got back above it and then back tested it. So again, we continue to hold above that 20-week moving average. Bulls are in control. Take out the 20-week. You got to take out the 100-day. By the time we do it, should we do it, you would have a significant drop like over here. That's what has to happen. Above it is bullish, below it is bearish. Again, we continue to monitor these trend lines on the weekly chart. Again, this trend line right here from these highs in 2021, we moved just above that level. We're right at it right now. And the lows here from 2021 and early 2022, if we exclude the shadows there, it's pointing up to the levels that we just recently hit, the high on November 22nd. So it's what we're watching is to see, can we exceed that high? And even if we go higher, we could just go higher and hit this trend line, or just overthrow the trend line and have the move fail. If we end up getting rejection surrounding these trend lines and maybe a false breakout above them. But right now, so far, we're stalling at them after breaking out above this level. Again, the risk is that we form a divergence on the weekly and monthly indicators, similar to what we had over here. But here, we just went a little bit higher. Whoops, my trend line moved on me. Sometimes trend lines move here. This one, we went above the 2021 first peak. We went just a little bit higher. Here, we've gone much higher to these other trend lines, at least so far. If we exceed that, then again, you've got another trend line coming in around 10 or 15,000 or so. I talked about the channel here. If we do exceed this trend line right here, you've got this channel, and again, I've drawn a trend line in red, including the shadow down here, and again, that would take us up here. If we exclude the shadow ever so slightly and include these highs over here, again, it'd take us very, very close to that same area, depending on when we come into contact with it. But again, you're looking at about 110, 115,000. If we took our time reaching it, maybe as high as 120,000. But again, I'm watching these levels. Should we go above 100,000? Now, maybe we just go up to the trend line and go. That would give us a higher high, or overthrow it, and again, just turn right back down. Should we, go to the to the 105,000 area, again, we may just come up here and then quickly turn. But if we do go higher, you've got the 110, 115,000 area, which would be the upper end of this channel in the weekly time frame. Quickly, we have these divergences on the weekly charts, and again, they may not be done yet. As I've said, if we can end up clearing this level, you've got this this larger channel here that if we can clear this level, or even if we pull back and we ended up going higher, if we get the rally continuing on into 2025, early 2025, we'll be watching the channel and these trend lines closely. But there is a possibility of this larger divergence, much like what we had over here in 2021 with the two peaks. There was a divergence here, and then we turned down and we got another peak forming a divergence. Very similar here. This divergence gave us this 33% sell-off and then the rally back up. Whether it's done or not remains to be seen. We need to see more evidence of that. It's something worth watching, these trend lines, and then the upper channel line here with this potential divergence looming over the weekly chart here on the RSI here. It's not just the RSI that's forming this, and again, it may not be done. Right here, started to turn down, and then it turned back up higher. Could see something similar to that again and try to move above 100,000. But here, again, we've got it on the MACD, got it on the price oscillator. It's on a lot of indicators. Here it is down here on the price oscillator, looking very similar to the MACD, looking very similar to the previous peak that developed there in 2021. So just some things worth watching. On the weekly chart, we've got divergences on the monthly chart. I talked about that in my last couple of updates. While we've had the breakout on the dollar, could be problematic for Bitcoin going forward. If we look at volatility, the volatility is down. It's been dropping on Bitcoin. Bitcoin starts selling off around the trend lines I've been talking about in the weekly time frame, getting back above the signal line right here. Volatility starts increasing above that level. That'd be extremely bearish for Bitcoin, like over here. Again, coin made a higher high, volatility made a higher low, and they diverged, and we saw volatility begin to spike, and that led to this downturn with Bitcoin. So again, we've had periods of downturns, this uptrend, but bulls are in control, and as long as volatility is below the signal line, bulls can stay in control. But we start getting a big sell-off like we did back over in November and December of 2021, getting back above that signal line like we did over here, seeing volatility sharply increase can be very problematic surrounding the 100,000 area, just under it or just over it. Do that, recession coming. That's very, very possible if we get an immediate recession rather than it being delayed to March or April or something. So just some things to be paying attention to. But again, we start getting above the signal line with volatility, and we start seeing volatility rise, the Bitcoin volatility rise like we did over here, then Bitcoin will drop. Right now, volatility is dropping as Bitcoin has risen back up, and that marked that September bottom and the bounce off of Bitcoin's average price. But right now, this does look very similar to what we had over here in 2021. One thing, if you look at Ethereum, it's coming right up to this trend line of resistance. I'm watching that as Bitcoin's at some of those other trend lines. This trend line right here is from the March peak. Bitcoin has exceeded the March peak. Ethereum has stalled at it, forming a rising wedge. So something, and getting a negative divergence here. So something worth paying attention to, because you know that sometimes at turning points, Bitcoin and Ethereum diverge from one another. They don't always diverge from one another, but sometimes they do. So again, we're coming up to this trend line. Does Ethereum eventually clear it? Does it turn off of it and then clear it? Or does it reverse off of it? Again, something worth paying attention to. But just know, again, they do have divergences at turning points. They did at the 2022 bottom here. Ethereum got a higher low. Bitcoin got a lower low. They diverged over here in early 2021. There's been other divergences here and over here, but again, you've got Bitcoin moving to a new high, Ethereum is stalling at this trend line, and from these highs right here, if we take it further back, that goes back to the 2021 high. So just an important level to be watching on Ethereum.